Welcome to Insights with C5 Insight. I am Paige Cassida. Hope you're doing well today. And with me, I have Patrick, Emily, and Malcolm.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
So today we're going to talk about project versioning, and that might not be exactly what you think it is. We talk about V2, V3 of something in our organization when we're talking with folks about projects. So we wanted to kind of bring this concept to other folks and let y'all think about it and use that in your organizations. So, Malcolm, what are your thoughts about project versioning?
So I think it's fascinating because we've talked about this internally as a team, which is why it rose to this agenda. Just the idea that projects really should be chunked together. We talk a lot about let's be simple, let's go the simple route, right? Let's not get overly complex too quickly.
Yep.
Sure, sometimes we have complex requirements that we have to achieve, but you can't get there without this solid foundation in place. And that solid foundation should be chunked into a V1 of something to say, look, we're gonna start and build the foundation. Maybe we won't go live with it for 6 more months, but we're gonna chunk it into version 1, 2, and 3, or sprint 1, 2, and 3, same concept. To allow us to work in more, I guess we'd call them like bite-sized chunks, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of benefit. I'm curious to hear the others, and we'll get into the benefits in a minute. But that's kind of the concept is like, let's start small, let's knock out the foundation, then let's take the next step, build upon that, that iterative approach, right?
Yeah,
I think there's
absolutely.
tons of benefits to doing it that way.
Especially for brand new implementation. So companies, organizations that haven't touched CRM or any sort of relational database before, you do need to start from that foundation, from the base, to avoid overwhelming who will eventually be your end
Mhm.
users. So I think that's definitely a key important factor there when we're thinking about versioning.
Yeah.
Great. I think for me, one of the biggest benefits I see is that the ability for people to consume change is limited. No matter how much we say we're open to change and we embrace change, I'm somebody who feels like that. But the reality is, when I'm faced with change, it's a little bit jarring, and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, but hold on, I need to do this in the right way. And I think versioning a project and having stages like that allows you to slowly get your head around something. Particularly in the kind as consultants, we deal with companies with projects, and they're implementing these projects. We're working with them to do that. They've got a whole day job. They've got a whole business continuity aspect to their work that they got to worry about. And if you throw too much at them, they can't properly adopt it because they're trying to now juggle learning all of this 4 versions worth of stuff in one go, whilst also trying to maintain their normal day-to-day job. And that's exhausting. That's all there is
Yeah.
to it. I think it's too much.
Absolutely.
That's such a good point. And actually, just on that note that I wasn't really considering before is even when we're thinking about user acceptance testing or a UAT phase of a project, to your point, that's additional work already on, these testers and or day jobs. So if we're throwing off, 4 sprints worth of testing or test scripts, or here's, an 3 hours or 4 hours worth of work that we need you to get through, breaking it out into those smaller chunks is actually, it is a lot more manageable for them as well. Yeah, I don't know why I never thought about that till right now, but yeah.
So how do you help this probably more internal conversation that we didn't really get to yet? How do we help our customers accept the idea of versioning, right? Because the dreamers, especially, you get them on a project and they're like, oh, I can't wait to realize this big vision that we've talked about. We're really excited to get there. And so now we're faced with, yeah, we will get there, but we got to do it in this approach that we're talking about. But they just want to get there. How do we temper a customer, a client, or an organization inside of themselves? How do they temper the expectations of everybody around them to realize we have to do this sequentially and in the right order to get it right? And I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. Any thoughts?
I mean, other than telling them just right up front, try to preview for them, you're going to want to do this, but this is what it's going to look like in reality, because, all the things we've been saying, people can only change at a certain cadence. And if you go too fast, you're going to lose people. You're not going to have adoption. So what good does that do you? And it's all of those horrible sayings that have been passed around for generations of you can't boil the ocean, how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. It's all these concepts. So sometimes I just throw those back on, especially the dreamers who are C-level people, to be like,
Right.
look, you use these ideas all the time, and it applies to this just as much.
Yeah, good call.
And I think it needs to become part of the natural language of your meetings.
Mm.
You know, one of my clients, they have started saying it themselves. I mean, that's the ultimate, right?
That's amazing.
You know,
Yeah.
we'll be talking about something, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that needs to be, but they're ahead of me. And they're like, yeah, but that needs to be version 2 or version 3 or version 7, depending on what they're asking about. So yeah, I think it needs to become natural language, and you need to be sure that you let the client know you hear them. You know, I'm going to put that, and sometimes you need to say things like, you know what, I'm going to put that in the V3, V4 bucket, and we'll revisit it then, kind of thing. That's probably been the biggest change that I've seen in using that kind of communication.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love the idea of putting it in front of them somewhere. Like we talk about a backlog if you're a full-on agile shop, or even if you're not, just keeping a list of all the things we're going to get to and where they fall, right? And start to categorize them, throw some metadata against them. Like that's definitely a V3 thing because there are dependencies to this.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to make it complicated. Just at least put it in front of them so that they can see it. Because I think that gives them a sense of assurance. Okay, it's on the radar. We're just not ready to get there yet, which is a huge step.
Yeah, and helps with prioritizing as you are moving through these sprints, because maybe if it is part of the weekly status calls that you might have a slide up with these items or whatever that looks like. Maybe it does come that a month later when you're starting sprint 3 of 4, some of those items do need to be brought up, but at least we're constantly thinking about them and giving the client a chance to see that and reprioritize as they need as well.
Yeah. I love that. Patrick,
Mm-hmm.
your all the phrases you hear. One of the good ones I heard from somebody once, they could see that this was happening. There was scope creep was happening, and they're trying to do way too much. And they said, we're trying to boil the ocean, but we're frying all the fish. And I was like, I love it, because that's what happens. You end up frying all the fish, being the doers who are trying to make things happen, and you're frying them. So you don't want to have that. And maybe for dinner, but not for your project.
Right.
And and I think that's us as consultants talking about V1, V2 of things is also freeing for us, because when we talk about our values, specifically here at C5, one of our values isn't being a leader servant, it's being a servant leader. So I think all of us are servants, and because of that, we do want to satisfy those folks and give them what they want. But when we start using the same ideas about V1, V2, we're giving ourselves permission. You know what? It's okay to not take care of this right now. It's on the list. We will get to it. And I think that that's also freeing for us.
Agreed. Well said. Well, I think that's a good little chat. I mean, we try to keep these videos nice and short just to give you some insight into our own insights here at C5 Insight.
Nice.
Hopefully you found it helpful. Hopefully you found it helpful, and we'd love to hear. I'll do the YouTube thing. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments down in the comment section. And so please drop us a line if you have any additional information, or tell us a little bit about what do you do to manage expectations around a project in terms of versions. We'd love to hear your insights. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.